Hi. Before this video begins, I want to say there's a summary at the very end if you care about every single detail here. So feel free to just skip to the end. I will mark that down so you can just go there and then you'll get the entire context of the video. However, if you want a visual representation and me just showing things and how they work, then feel free to watch the entire thing. Anyways, hope you guys continue to have a good morning, night, shit like that, and enjoy the video. Peace. Hi. I think there's been a lot of misunderstanding when it comes to the new runes and items such as Yuntal, PTA, Lethal Tempo, and Collector. So here I am to try and inform and set the record a bit more straight so you'll feel less frustrated with some of the items, because it's not necessarily always that the numbers is telling the entire truth. So first, we are going to start with Yuntal and Collector, and then we'll move on to PTA after. So what has to be understood about Yuntal is that Yuntal is basically just a mini Infinity Edge. So to show this quickly, what I will be doing is purchasing Yuntal, getting a log crate here. I'm going to put dummy, and then I will be auto-attacking this dummy with 124 AD, but I actually have to get more. I need 10 more, because this gives 60. Alright, so that's 10 more. So at this point here, I have equal AD to Infinity Edge. And when I do this auto attack now, I'm going to hit for 254. And then my Yuntal is going to end up dealing 324 damage, or 325 damage total. Adding the second dummy here, I'll be getting rid of my longsword. So I have again the same AD as I would with Yuntal. And I'll be attacking this one. And as you can see, Yuntal actually ended up doing more total damage than Infinity Edge at this point. Even currently now, if I do get rid of the extra 10 AD, you'll see that Yuntal will get very close to Infinity Edge early game. Right. So this has to be understood that Yuntal, the additional damage, is basically just a mini version of Infinity Edge. And that the damage is actually not that bad, relatively speaking. So when you're seeing these numbers here, like the 60, 30, whatever, like if Infinity Edge could show the damage that it dealt, I think some people would at times feel very underwhelmed and discouraged by this item as well. However, Infinity Edge again does have the advantage of having high AD too. But again, like roughly around 140, 150 AD, you are going to see this plan out. And of course, Switch has his ultimate at level 6, which then makes Yuntal quote-unquote weaker, in like relatively speaking to Infinity Edge as an example, right? So that is the first thing I just kind of want to mention here, that this 60 additional damage is basically just a mini Infinity Edge. So about the low damage thing, I've seen that been complained about a lot when it comes to Yuntal. So what I've done here is I've added 50 armor to both of these targets, which would be relative to almost any ADC bot lane at the point at which you get your first item. Maybe they have 10 more, maybe they have 10 less. You can argue whatever. By the end of the day, this is what I've chosen. And I'll be displaying both Yuntal, Collector, and Infinity Edge, right? With ultimate. So currently, both of these have 50. We can verify that once again. I will do a ult auto attack. It hits for 121. Again, doesn't proc the additional damage, but one thing that's been mentioned that Collector has an advantage of is the more AD you have, the harder your auto attacks are going to hit based on having some lethality. So at some point, lethality might just give you like 4 or 5 more damage, but then if you have 20 more AD, it's suddenly going to do 10, 20 more damage, right? So it kind of like scales in a way with your AD as well. So you saw 121, then I'm going to ult again, attack this one, and you see 122. So even though Collector has 10 less AD than Yuntal at this point when I used my ultimate, it still did more damage on the initial hit and still ended up doing 1 more damage than Yuntal. But again, if I were to crit here, I'm pretty certain that Yuntal would do more. We can verify that, of course. So this is Collector, 215. And then we will purchase Yuntal. Do the same thing again. 213, slightly less damage, right? 2 less damage there. Even though it has 10 more AD. So you can see that with the crit, Yuntal still did more damage. Now we will be getting Infinity Edge just to compare the damage with Yuntal to Infinity Edge. With my ultimate, as I said, this scales, so of course the more AD you have. I'm currently via the breakpoint, I think, where Infinity Edge will do more damage than Yuntal, but I will pop my ultimate as well, so it should be doing more. Yeah. So even relatively speaking, currently at this point here, there is a roughly 21 damage difference between Yuntal and Infinity Edge. Right? So it's not large numbers. This is important to understand. There is not large numbers per auto attack. So if you're seeing 200 damage, that is, like in this case, yeah, actually not bad. Right? So this is basically being covered. And you have to think logically about this as well. Because why would Riot add an item to League of Legends that is the same price as another one, but it would be better in every single way? That would be kind of weird. I mean, we do know that they do this, but again, right? Collector has other things it gives. Right? It executes them below 5% HP. This is great. It cannot be... like, it cannot be forgotten that it does this. It also gives you 25 gold, so this will help you snowball a little bit more than Yuntal. But early game, when you see like 50, 60, 100 damage, you have to understand that there's no other item you would have bought at that point that would give you more damage than that, right? So don't forget that. So Yuntal isn't as bad as you think. Of course, Collector might feel nicer because you're going to snowball better. But like the overall damage of Collector, unless you're executing people, is actually lower than Yuntal. Even if you add armor, you just take my word for this. Because I want to make this video short. But even if I add... oh, actually, let's just do it. Fuck yeah. Alright, so now I have full build. I have a target here which is considered a tank, right? Jackshaw, Randuin, Thormail, Tabai. So at this point here, I'm going to do my ult, auto attack this one, I'm going to deal this amount of damage. Right? Then I'm going to sell my items and get a collector here instead. And you can see that again, the damage difference per auto attack is not that much. It's 20 less, right? So again, if you do 10 auto attacks late game and you see that Yuntal did 200 damage or something, then understand that it's actually like Collector wouldn't do more. This is important to remember. Collector would not do more damage. But what it will do is execute. It's not going to feel much worse. It might hit a slightly harder early game when you ulti and you don't crit. So like the overall feel of the item might be better. But even though Yuntal shows a small number, doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad, because relatively speaking to Collector, especially late game, full build, I would rather have Yuntal than Collector. Just so that is said, because it will deal more damage overall. Ignoring the execute. Okay, so now we'll do PTA versus Lethal Tempo. And just quickly here, I will say that I do think that PTA is a much more well-rounded rune. It will give you more pressure early game in lane, which is very important, and one of the reasons why PTA might feel better than Lethal Tempo. Also, will PTA show more damage in most cases than Lethal Tempo. PTA usually shows anywhere from 1.5 to 3k to even more than that sometimes. But something that has to be understood about Lethal Tempo, just like I mentioned with Ardent Sansa, with that when I play with certain people and they say that it sucks, is that some of the damage isn't shown. And what do I mean by that? So let's get to that now. So, Lethal Tempo, of course, gives you attack speed, right? So you can see I'm at 160 and then I'll end up at around 176. So it's not a lot, but it's still a good amount. And with fights sometimes being awkward, it is not always you're able to auto-attack and maximize your output regardless. So having higher attack speed will allow you to put in auto-attacks where you other times wouldn't be able to do with lower attack speed. Hopefully this makes sense. So, going from this now, when my Lethal Tempo is stacked, I might be able to get one additional auto-attack at some point in the game. Or maybe two. Maybe in a team fight, I'll get one extra auto-attack, right? So, Let's just let these reset. And then we'll take the... Right, yeah. So just as an example, this is the extra auto attack I got, right? So we'll add the damage together. 1,000, 1,000, 1,500, 1,450, 730, right? So we add that together, we get 2,005. So let's just say like 3.5k, just for the sake of it, right? Just say 3.5, and then you can add like 50% damage reduction to that. So you get like 1,750, something like that. And this damage will not show on lethal tempo. So even though lethal tempo here at this point only shows 500 damage, maybe during the game you got one additional auto attack in a fight. Maybe in a team fight you got an additional auto attack on the entire enemy team because of lethal tempo, which you wouldn't have got with a PTA. And those auto attacks and that damage will not show on lethal tempo. Just like an Ardent Sensor giving 25 attack speed and 20 magic damage. It might just show 100 damage, but in reality, Ardent Sensor allowed you to get one more auto attack off in a situation where without you wouldn't. And that auto attack damage that you did there will be anywhere from 100 to maybe 1000. So that damage is not going to show anywhere. You might not even realize it, but it's important to know, right? That lethal tempo might allow you to get an additional auto attack where PTA would not due to lower attack speed. And that damage will not show anywhere. However, I will say that I do think that PTA is a more well-rounded rune. Gives you more pressure early game. Maybe just late game becomes less relevant. And of course, if champions are going on you, if I'm playing Twitch jungle as an example, I would go lethal press attack versus very aggressive champions, right? Like Elise. Because I will be able to contest a lot better early game. So that presence cannot be understated either. But it is still important to just keep in mind that even though lethal tempo shows less damage in PTA, maybe it allowed you to get one or two more attacks during the entire game. So the only metric you can really look at when it comes to even Yuntal, Collector, PTA, or lethal tempo is you need a large sample size and just average the damage. And there's a lot of ways of doing this. One, you could of course look at your own games, right? And you could compare the damage. As an example here, I did 37k. And in this game here, I did... Oh. In this game here, I did 27k, and then in this game here I did 16k, and then you would just look. So just play one game of PTA, play one with lethal tempo, play one with Yuntal, play one with Collector, and then compare the end game result. But again, snowballing is important. Collector can help you snowball, PTA can help you snowball. Of course, PTA will also give you the exposed damage on every other champion, so you'll do 8% more damage overall on every auto attack. So that's also important, because maybe sometimes you won't get that extra auto attack off that I talked about, but you will get one auto attack that will hit harder with PTA. So overall, the point of PTA and lethal tempo is to say that lethal tempo isn't as bad as you think, but I do think that lethal tempo could do with some improvement. But that is only because of the strong presence that you gain from PTA early game in comparison to lethal tempo, mostly, and also just how it functions in general. But again, it's not as bad as you think. Same thing with Yuntal. Yuntal definitely is stronger than Collector in almost every single aspect, outside of the snowballing potential, extra gold, and all of that. Full crit, Yuntal will do more damage than Collector. You might not see, or you might not seem like you are getting a lot more damage, but it is definitely doing more damage. Unless, of course, you execute the tank or something. And that is value that cannot be, again, ignored, right? So it is really just a fuel thing here, but Yuntal isn't as bad as people think. I don't think Yuntal is bad at all. Of course, I do think it's sad that we are getting cheaper items in a sense because we are losing endgame stats, which is something I care a lot about. But overall, it's not a bad item, and lethal tempo isn't as bad as you think. PTA might show more damage, but that is not the entire story. And that is the message of this video here. Hope you guys learned something. If not, hope you at least have a nice day, morning, night, like that, and take care. Peace.